Hello and welcome to the Furreal podcast, the show that discusses music, film, and most importantly, furries. I'm your host Matthew, also known as Hypebeast, and on today's episode, I'm brought with an artist and a personal fursuit maker, KiddTheGoat. Hello, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hello, it's wonderful to be here. I'm so excited.
How have you been today? Have you been up to much today?
I've been good. Nothing much. Just went to the doctor's. So really nothing going on for me.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I haven't been up to too much today, but I was picking up a vinyl today because I had to pay customs on it. It was my 100 gecs vinyl, one of my favorite albums ever. I've recently just put a top store up on my Twitter of like all my favorite albums. Like 1,000 gecs is like an incredible record, I think. But I think it's either like love it or hate it thing because it's definitely quite an acquired taste. Anyway, so I got on the bus to go and pick it up from town, and I realized I didn't have the slip to pick it up. Because I need the slip or whatever to confirm that it's actually mine. I'm not just like nicking somebody else's 100 gecs vinyl. So I'm like, I'm going to have to go all the way back, and I've paid for the bus. But luckily the woman at the counter just let me take it anyway, which she probably shouldn't have done. But I mean, it's okay because it means I don't have to waste enough money getting the bus back. So yeah, that was probably the most exciting thing that's happened to me today. Because apart from that, I've just kind of been relaxing. So
yeah, man, she sounds like such a sweetheart.
Yeah, exactly. Saved my life. Didn't have to pay for another bus. All that jazz. But it's fine,
yeah.
I mean, it's a Christmas miracle that I came. I mean, it's just a Christmas miracle. I ordered it in July, and it's arrived like 4-5 months later. And I'm like,
oh, jeez.
Yeah, I know. Just before Christmas as well. It's a nice little personal Christmas present from 100 gecs. And I'm really glad they repressed that vinyl because it originally was sold out. And then they were like, oh, okay, we'll repress some more copies. So I'm really happy about that. But yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, I've just gotten back into collecting vinyls. I am currently looking for the album that we're going to continue to discuss in this episode for Ocean Eyes, Owl City. And boy, those vinyls are pretty much impossible to find. They go for like minimum of $60 if they're just decent quality. So I'm currently on the hunt for one of those.
That's good, yeah. It's weird because Owl City doesn't really strike me as a band that would like have difficult vinyls to find, but that's really interesting though.
Yeah, it's because he hasn't been making music in a very long time.
Do they only do do you know if they only got like one pressing and stuff? I mean, especially for kind of Ocean Eyes with the obviously with Fireflies on, which is like the kind of flagship song.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure. I just know that they are definitely not currently creating any new presses of the vinyls. They have some for other albums, but they haven't been making any merch or anything in a long time because they've kind of been in hiatus and stopped making music for now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll get onto the album later on in the episode, but let's establish you as a creator, as a furry creator. What kind of stuff do you make, and how do you what links you within the furry community?
Oh, it's all good. So I am a graphic design student who does furry commissions and digital art on the side. I like to play around with pretty much any medium when it comes to painting or drawing. However, my main medium is doing digital art, and I've been doing it for commissions for a few years. I've kind of been off and on with the fandom, whereas I kind of really dove in head first, made my first persona when I was about 8th grade, so end of middle school, and kind of fizzled out during high school until the end of senior year. Whereas I was kind of introduced back into the fandom, I made my own art, and that kind of wavered throughout the summer until my first semester of college is when I really dove headfirst back into the fandom, which was just about last year, and I've decided to make my own suit, which is Kid, which is my very first fursuit I've ever made, and I made him around her. I use any pronouns with that one. I made them in February of this year, and the rest is, 2020.
History, yeah.
It's where I am now.
That's super interesting, though, because me and you have similar kind of connections and gradual, integration with the furry community and, like, the fandom. Because I was exactly the same way. I played around with being a furry before I went to university, which is, like, the equivalent of doing a first year at college. And then when I went to university, I was like, I'm going to try this out because, I've moved to a new city. I'm like meeting all these new people, on my course and people that I live with. And I'm like, this can be something that kind of defines me, and it is something that I really enjoy, kind of watching from the sidelines. So what if I was a part of that? And that is definitely something that made me want to be a furry more as well. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, and especially with the college that I go to, George Mason University,
Mm-hmm.
it is even people who are not in the furry fandom, they always joke about, oh, George Mason, that's the furry school. Like, I'm not even joking. On our Barstool GMU Instagram account, the current trending meme is the guy at the corner of the party, and they posted a meme where it was, nobody here knows I'm a furry. And I'm like, yeah, we're kind of the school who's known for having, well, more closeted furries, but in the GMU furry group chat, we have around 80 or so members, and it is kind of crazy how it's just a thing here.
I haven't met any furries from my university. If you go to York Uni and you're a furry, hit me up, by the way. But I am in a Telegram chat for like the area, but I joined that group chat when COVID started, so I haven't been to any meets at all. And I've always been busy when they've done like little online ones, so I just kind of watch from the sidelines in that chat. But I'm not very good at talking on Telegram anyway. But if you don't mind me kind of going into this a little bit more, did you? Because obviously you were discussing closeted furries. Were you a closet furry for a while, or did you just like as soon as you became a part of the kind of fandom and kind of integrated your life in the community, did you just go with it and just tell anybody and just be open about it, or was it more gradual?
Yes, so that's kind of more of a journey. Like for me, it's not really a thing I bring up when I first meet people. I'm just like, yeah, I'm an artist on commission. And it's kind of funny because with my old hall, I lived in the LGBT plus living learning community at George Mason. And it's kind of funny because literally we had a guy in our hall, shout out to him, good friend of mine, who just wore his fursuit in the hallway. I felt so bad for this poor kid named Alec. He is terrified of mascot costumes, so he just walked in the hall, saw this guy Ed in his fursuit, screamed, and just ran back into his dorm. We even have pictures on our wall of my old RA wearing the fursuit, so it was just kind of a thing in our hall. And this eventually led me to be a bit more open about my interest and artwork in the fandom, which led to me getting the nickname the Furry Hustler, because nobody in our hall really knew what commissions are. So they were just like, whoa, you have someone paying you $30 for a drawing? Dude, you are hustling them. And I'm like, that's not a lot. Like, do you not know what art is? Because, like, we didn't really have many art majors in that hall.
See, it seemed like you had with your like living area, you had a quite close knit people who would be accepting of a hobby or interest that isn't exactly a kind of normal standard hobby for most people, which seems really nice. And it's good that you had another furry that you live with as well, so that's kind of cool.
Oh yeah, it was certainly a chaotic hall with my first and second semester in college, but the people I've met there, so accepting, absolutely wonderful people. And it was such a wonderful time with that being my first introduction to college. So it was just a great time. I miss those guys.
See, I was the exact opposite. So, well, half and half. Because I didn't care about if anybody had a negative opinion on me, and I've always been like that. But the way I started telling people I was a furry was like, I would go... this is so dumb. I would go on, obviously, with uni in the UK, it's very big on, like, because obviously... the standard age you start university is like 18, and that's the legal drinking age in the UK. So we have this like week called Freshers Week, and it's like basically everybody just goes fucking ham and just goes to clubs and like gets pissed and shit. So for that entire week, I was just going out all the time with like my flatmates and people on my course. And I just had this thing of like telling people I was a furry when I was like really mortal, like when I was really drunk. And it was just something that I did. And I remember I got really drunk and I went, look at this dog. That's me, by the way. And they were like, oh, are you a furry? And I was like, yeah. And I thought they'd be like, ew, what the fuck? But like every single person I told that from like kind of that way of telling them when I was drunk, were all just like, yeah, that's so cool. And I mean, to be fair, it's probably because they're drunk as well. But aside from that, yeah, it was a questionable way of telling people. It's kind of funny to see how much I've kind of changed, I guess, in terms of, or how more confident I am with it, because now Like, for example, somebody was messaging me about a possible internship or like possible work experience thing I could do, like a commission, editing commission or whatever, or someone on my course that I don't really speak to that much. Then they know I do editing, and they were like, "Oh, I thought I'd just send you this just in case you want to do it." And I was like, "Oh, thank you, but I'm kind of busy with like stuff, my personal stuff. I'm making a podcast at the moment." And they were like, "Oh, cool. What's it about?" And usually I would just be like, "Oh, it's just about music and film." But I was like, "Oh no, I just invite furry people on because I'm a furry." And they were like, "Oh, it's dope. That's really cool." Because I think this is what I was talking. Sorry, I'm rambling by the way, guys. I have had, just if you think I'm more hyperactive than usual, I've had 4 coffees apparently. Well, I had like a liter of this fucking cafe latte thing, and I drank it all, and then I looked at the back, and it was like, this is 4 servings of coffee, and I was like, oh shit. So that's why I'm like more talkative than usual. But anyway, I've completely fucking forgot what I was gonna say. Oh well.
That's all good. Yeah, the coffee does that too. I am very lucky I'm not a coffee drinker.
Have you ever seen The Iron Giant?
Mm-hmm. I've seen bits and pieces of that movie, but I've yet to see it. Like, I really want to. The animation's phenomenal. Like, I don't know how I haven't seen it in a while,
but there's a scene where Hogarth, the kid, is like given coffee, and he just goes in a full-on like ramble and just talks and talks and talks and talks. But that's basically me right now. But no, I remember what I was going to say. I think I was talking about this in a previous episode, where I think once you hit like a certain age, like past 18, maybe like 19, 20, people are either like too busy, like with a job or a degree, to kind of like negatively care about somebody else's like hobbies that much, or like something that like, doesn't affect my life at all. Or they're like nice enough to like be accepting of something that isn't like the set norm of like society or whatever you want to kind of call it. So I think I used to be worried about telling people, especially people like my age, of how they would react. But first of all, I don't care about if you have a negative opinion on it. And second of all, most people that on my course and stuff are like really nice people, and I kind of need to realize that. Like, honestly, I don't know if you feel the same with your course or your degree or whatever, but it's how I feel about mine.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, the art majors were always known for being the really weird kids who can't do math. And I mean, hey, it's stereotype for a reason. I can't do math. Definitely a weird kid considering my hobbies. But yeah, they're just so accepting. And I've definitely noticed that, especially being like newly into college, that in high school, I was like terrified to tell anybody because I learned quickly from middle school. And my senior year yearbook quote was almost, "If you knew me in middle school, I'm sorry," because of how just darn cringy I was. Because I dove into every fandom, every phase. I was absolutely like that kid. I was the horse girl along with the fandom girl in my school. And now that I'm in college, I'm now like, wow, just the environment with like college between high school is absolutely insanely different, because high school, everyone will judge you for the slightest thing. But in college, it's like, oh yeah, you're furry? That's cool. I don't care.
I mean, I was exactly the same. So in middle school, I had this like weird ass guinea pig phase. Do not ask me. It was fucking weird. And every time, it's so weird. I had like this is before COVID, by the way, just for context, just in case everyone's like, why are you doing this during COVID? No, this is way before COVID. My friend had a pub crawl for his birthday, and he invited like loads of people, and people from like middle school that I'd never seen for like 7-8 years, like pulling up. And I'm like, oh shit. And they just like, everyone was really nice, luckily. But some of them were like, oh, do you still love guinea pigs? And I was like, oh my fucking God. Like, no, I don't. Oh my God. So I was exactly the same. And what I realized, I don't know if you feel like this as well, but I think in obviously the people that have like unique attributes, or like are quote unquote cringy in middle school, it's shit in high school and middle school when you like stuff, when you're passionate about something, people always make fun of you for that stuff. But I think once you, especially for me, doing a film degree, I'm now surrounded by those passionate people, and that's what I love. That's what I really, really like.
Yeah, exactly. Like in college, you finally get to pursue what you really want to do, rather than in high school, you're just stuck in the same cookie cutter thing as everyone else. And you're just always surrounded with people who share your same interests and want you to be good at those interests. So it's just a wonderful environment of people being like, yo, your art's awesome. Like, look at my art. And it's just constantly feeding off of each other, being just constant positive energy, pushing for us to be our best selves.
And it's a lovely environment to be in. And even with like coronavirus and stuff, like we have a group chat and we're all still really supportive of each other and stuff. and everybody like helps each other with their assignments. So like from that standpoint as well, it's really nice. So it's my message to anybody: go to university. I mean, if you don't want to, you don't have to, but a personal thing, even if worried about how difficult a degree is or whatever, people are like, oh, well, the degree, it's about all the degree, but it really is about working hard at your degree or your college like major or whatever, but it's also about the experience, I would say, and it's about the experience of like moving to a new city if you move, or like meeting new people. And it is, I feel like it's really, really helped me come out my shell and be more confident, and that again links to me being a furry and like not giving a shit if somebody thinks badly of me for being a furry, because I mean it's like it's 2020, it's current year, like who gives a shit, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, but
Yeah.
mhm.
We're all stuck in the struggle together, so who even has the time to
Exactly,
judge people for being a
that's
furry
exactly
or
what I was
not?
saying. Let's move on a bit. So let's have a talk about your personal experience with making a fursuit, because I was talking to Vix in episode 2 about it a little bit, but I kind of want to go more in depth because we had so much to talk about in episode 2, like with their trading cards and all that. I didn't have enough time to kind of go in depth with the fursuit making, but you've personally made a fursuit yourself. How hard is it? What did you do to prepare? And do you think you'll ever do, because you've made your personal one, do you think you'll ever do kind of commissions for suits, or do you think it's like way too hard?
Oh, first off, making my first suit, that has given me, I mean, I've already respected fursuit makers
Hmm.
so much because, oh my gosh, I can't, the amount of work they put in. But making my own head has given me the greatest, utmost respect for makers because, oh my goodness, that was such a long struggle. And with it being my first head, I was like, I did hours and hours
Yeah.
of research just watching different
Hmm.
videos and tutorials and such. And I'm lucky that I had the background where I already knew how to like sew and everything. And also being an art major
Yeah,
definitely helped it.
definitely.
But even still, it was like the whole budgeting, finding where to get my
Hmm.
supplies, having to work with a really crappy razor because I couldn't afford a better one. That thing, oh, don't get me started on that razor. It was so bad. It can't even shave like a regular
Oh
person's
no.
beard. That thing was awful. But it's just, and also having to balance it literally while I was in college working. I literally created it at the end of my first winter break to all the way to February, and it was just crazy because I would go from class to class just carrying this giant duffel bag of all my fursuit supplies, and people would always be like, "Oh, what's in the bag?" And I'm like, just art major stuff." And I would just go back and forth from my classes to the art hall, working really late into the night and walking back freezing cold. And it was just such a long process. It was really frustrating because I was like, I had no idea how to
Hmm.
do this. And we discussed this earlier, not in this episode, but before, whereas my character Kid had two sets of horns where one
Yeah,
was
yeah.
ram horns, and I bought a set of ram horns from DVC Creations, and it was around $75. Great quality, highly recommend them. But I was going to make them magnetic so I could take them on and
Hmm.
off to make easier storage. And while I was making the head, like as soon as I finished, I was like, I don't want to have these set of horns anymore. So I was like, crap. I spent $75 or so on these just to
Yeah.
not even use
Just
them.
not use them, yeah.
Yeah, so kids just got like a ton of magnets in their head for just no reason now. Maybe I could do a little hat.
Hmm. How long overall did it take to make the suit? Or, well, the partial at
Whew.
least.
That's a good question. I did not calculate my hours, but I would say like certain times, like if it was a test week, I would of course take a few days off,
Hmm.
but I'd say it would take around a month.
A month,
And I'd say
okay.
my funniest thing for working on it was in the art building. It was raining. We had a fire go off,
Oh
so everyone had to leave the
no.
building, and I was like, "Screw it! I'm taking my head because I need it. If this thing burns down, I'm gonna be so upset." So
Such
I
a
just
waste
took
of
it.
time if it burns down. You could take it, you know?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
persona is
And
you, that's you, you know?
yeah, exactly. And it kind of did help because it was freezing cold outside, and I
Hmm.
was like, I'm just gonna put this on my head
Oh
because
my
it's
god.
cold. And so everyone walking by was just like, oh God, there's just a furry just standing next to the smoking building. And I'm like, it wasn't me.
That reminds me, this is well, it's not completely off topic, but it reminds me of, I saw this TikTok of this furry who was doing like Zoom, like online lectures,
Hmm.
and he was doing them in suit, and that is so fucking cool to me. Like, the confidence in terms of like having high school students or college students like dressing up in your suit to like do classes is so funny to me. Like that's so funny. So
Yeah, I
that reminds me
mean,
of the
hey,
situation.
gotta do anything to make these Zoom classes interesting.
Exactly, yeah. All the same, a little boring. But no, a month is, I think that's a good turnaround, especially for your first suit as well. Like, I think that's fantastic.
I mean, I think it's mostly due to how many hours I put into the
That's
darn
fair enough,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
See, I would want to try and make my own suit, but I just know I would get really frustrated and I would like quit after like 20 minutes of like even trying.
Oh, yeah.
My girlfriend does a little bit of arts and crafts, and I think I was talking on a different episode. She was like, "Oh, how about you try and make one instead of like paying a commissioner a lot of money for it?" And I was like, "No, like it's not for me. It would just not go well. I would like carve the foam badly and stuff. You gotta do the foam, and then you gotta put the duct tape on it, and then you gotta get the fur. It's just all a big hassle." So I do really, really respect fursuit makers because people don't understand how much time and effort is put into making suits. It's mad. It's
Oh
insane.
my gosh, yes.
So, kind of moving on to your art and stuff. Have you had how long have you been doing commissions for long, or is this just something that you've just been starting after being in the fandom for? How long have you been in the fandom for? Then it's like a year or so now since you started at college, or how long?
Yeah. Um, so I would say like before college, it was around maybe 2, 3 years
Two,
and
3 years.
very minimal. Um, and then in college, like I've definitely been like into the fandom,
More active,
officially
yeah.
into the fandom for about a year now.
Okay.
Like I had my Twitter anniversary the other day, and I was like, oh,
Aye.
that's cool. So that was fun. As with commissions, I was reorganizing all my art files the other day, and I found that my first commission from DeviantArt, it was a My Little Pony commission,
Oh.
and that was in 2016. So I've
Mhm.
officially had them open since 2016, but the past year and being in the fandom, that has been like my best year with commissions because that's when I've actually made enough to be able to like
Oh,
sustain myself
fantastic.
in college. Like
Mhm.
it's not to the point where it's like a full-time job. It's just enough that I can afford like to go out and get some food and maybe treat myself with
Yeah,
like, I don't know, a new Pokemon plush or something like
that's
that.
nice. I mean, that's kind of how I feel with my editing commissions. I haven't got many because I don't really say I'm open that often because I've got uni stuff and I've got this podcast now. And I guess you can also link it to people saying, "Oh, you could like get sponsors on your podcast." I'm like, yeah, maybe if it gets a little bit bigger, but at the moment I'm focusing on my degree, and I only do commissions when I feel like, oh, if I want to treat myself, I can like do a video edit for somebody, and it's nice, I guess. Yeah, it's definitely something that I enjoy doing because it's specifically video editing is something I want to do is like a career. So it's really nice experience and kind of like practice for my degree as well, since it all links and all intertwines as well.
Yeah, exactly. And since we do have like our commissions and such that relate to our degrees, like for me, it's been the whole struggle of balancing my commissions with working on my
Working
college
at yeah.
degree.
Hmm.
And it's super interesting because it's hard to balance creating personal content and commissions during college, especially with finals and classes.
Yeah.
And I actually kind of thank COVID, not the disease, just the amount of time that we've been isolated. It has helped me find the balance and learn this balance to figure
Yeah.
out how to do my commissions and my
Hmm.
college work and got my grades back and all A's, 1B. So
Let's
I think it's a
go.
good balance. Yeah, I'm
Yeah, that's
really proud of that.
fantastic.
And it's very different because you think, oh yeah, your furry art, like that's gonna help you with your major. I'm like, not really, because like, yes, it's honing my art skills, but none of it really can be used or relating with any of my
Hmm.
classes. So funny enough, making furry art is actually like my own break from art.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel that as well. One of my assignments or one of my like modules in my degree is to like do audio editing with Audacity. And I'm like sat there editing a podcast episode and I'm like, this is literally what I need to do for an assignment, but I'm not doing the assignment, I'm doing my personal thing instead. And it's just really funny. I wish there was a way that I could like integrate the podcast into like being a submission for my work, but it obviously doesn't work like that. But I'm doing the same thing really.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing the exact same work that you would be doing
Hmm.
on your assignment.
Yeah.
It's just a personal project.
Have you ever submitted furry art for like a uni assignment or a high school assignment, or do you keep it
Um,
completely separate?
Somewhat. I did have this project last semester with one of my English classes, and I also have a extra credit thing that was very interesting with him. Whereas we were listening to this podcast named Limetown, and
Hmm.
we also that class was so interesting. We had a project in the beginning of the semester where we had to research on SCPs. So I combined SCP 1471, I believe, which is like the skull dog with the Limetown podcast. So I kind of used somewhat furry art because the origin of that SCP is it was a fursuit maker's art, and that photograph was deemed cursed, so it was
Oh,
turned
that's so
into an
cool.
SCP. So the history of that is very interesting, and it is furry in its origin. So
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, that'll be a very easy project for me making art. And for that class, we had a this also relates to how I came out as a furry to my parents. We had a extra credit assignment where we would have to go to a what he deemed nerd convention.
Oh, okay,
And
yeah.
oh yeah. So I was like, "Hey, mom and dad, it's totally for school, extra credit project, but there's like a convention coming up. So I was thinking of going to that because it's like 100 points extra credit." And they're like, "Oh, so what kind of convention is it?" And I was like,
Mm.
"Furthermore?" And they're like, "What?" And I was like, "Furthermore?" And they're like, "Is that like one of those edible things?" I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, okay. So what do you wear to one of those things?" Like, and I was like,
Oh
"Oh,
no.
well, time to introduce my parents to Kid." And it was so funny because introducing my parents, they were like, my mom was like, "Oh God," but then later went to, "Wait, so you made this? That's kind of impressive." And I was like, "Oh, yay, thank you." And I kind of had to ask them because at the time they were like, "Oh, it's all the way in Crystal City, which is like an hour away. It's
Hmm.
very easy for me." But they were like, "Oh no, you're not going to drive in this city yet. Like you're not ready." I'm like, "I've been driving for 2 years. Come on."
Hmm.
But it was very interesting, especially when they dropped me off there. And it was a shame because with them dropping me off, I could only go to three
Yeah.
hours to my very first convention. And we pulled up, and there's this luxury sports vehicle. I don't know my cars. It was this luxury
Hmm.
sports car,
Yeah.
and it had Rainbow Dash decals all over
Oh,
it. And my
oh my
parents were
God.
like, "Yep, we're here." And it was so funny. Like they went from this is terrible, but the charity for that con was for ALS because the
Hmm.
Ghost of Honor was Dog Bomb.
Oh yeah.
And
Okay.
my parents were like, "Oh, ALS, like the Ice Bucket Challenge?" I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Show us the website." Like, because they were like, "Are you sure ALS is not like secret for like animals loving sex?" And I was like,
Oh no.
"No, it's for ALS.
Oh
Oh
my
my God,
God.
no." And oh, they evolved from that to my dad being like, "I want to hug a very muscular wolf man." And I was like, "Thanks, Dad."
That's so funny. I feel exactly the same. So I've been putting off telling my parents I'm a furry for like ages now, and I know it's eventually gonna have to happen. But they know about my personal project, this podcast, but they don't know what it's about because they would be like, "Oh, Matthew, how are you doing with balancing uni stuff? And are you taking some time off?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm working on my personal project a little bit." And they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm making a podcast." And I was like, "I've got a meeting here and here, but then I got to do this now." Because I sometimes use my mum and my dad to like vent, and I'll be like, "Well, it won't be like bad venting or anything, but I'll be like, I'm like in terms of what I'm doing today, I'll be like, right, this is how I'm organizing my day," and they'll be like, "Oh, that sounds great." I like to call my parents a lot. It's just I don't know, it's nice to keep in touch with them, but I think I'm gonna have to tell them when I go home for Christmas, because my God, it's like I've told you I'm having this podcast, and I was like, I'll explain it when I get home. So now I've kind of set a thing of telling them when I get back, and I'm happy I've done that because I've been putting it off for so long, and I don't even think they're gonna think it's a bad thing. They won't even. I don't even think they'll know what the fuck it is, so I don't think they'll really care that much. So they'll probably think it's a bit odd because it is like I'm sorry furries who are listening, and I'm sorry, right? But as a furry, like this hobby is not like a societal norm. It's cool. It's unique. It's different, but it's definitely not something you would like, regardless of the preconceptions of what you think furries are. It isn't something that if you look at somebody walking around in an animal suit, you're not gonna go, "Oh, yo, that's like completely normal," are you? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
It's
mean, it's not normal in the slightest. It's literally like, I mean, not dismissing younger furs, but it's literally adults dressing up in thousands of dollars of
Yeah,
fur to look like
exactly.
a cartoon animal, giving each other hugs and squeaking and like paying their entire paychecks to get artwork of their little animal. Like,
Hmm.
yes, it's not normal, but does that mean it's okay? Yes,
Yeah,
these people are happy. We're enjoying what we do, but it's not a normal thing. And of course, it's going to get some odd looks,
yeah, exactly.
but it's a positive thing that makes
Mm.
people happy. So it's kind of fine.
Yeah,
It just
go.
takes a little
Hmm.
bit to get used to it.
Yeah, definitely. Going back to your experience at the convention, how was that? Because that was your first ever furry convention in the last, because it was one of the last ones before, COVID restrictions hit. So how was it experiencing that?
It was so interesting because one, I went completely by myself. So I didn't have a handler, I didn't have any friends with me. I was just completely by myself. And I've been to like comic conventions and everything previously, and I've always found them to be like super overwhelming and overstimulating. But going to the furry convention, furthermore, it was very relaxing and just fun.
Hmm.
Like I had a blast, even though I was absolutely by myself and wasn't with anybody for a majority of it. And yes, I only got to go for like 3 hours, but it was so much fun.
Yeah.
I even got to meet people like Spockter, and I even got in part of his video, and I was like, "Yo, that was so freaking cool." And it was so much fun, and I got to see all these amazing artists that I look up to, and I even got to see like Heck Geck with the worm on the string
Oh
plushes.
yeah,
Yeah, I got one of those. I love it. He's in the corner.
that's
I
so
love him.
cool.
It was just wonderful. And even with like COVID was a thing around this point, and it was just starting, so nobody really
Hmm.
knew how big it was going to be. Like they had hand sanitizer and everything everywhere because everyone was like, "Oh, be safe. Like we got this sickness going around." And nobody really like expected it to be as big
As
as it
big as
was.
yeah.
As soon as like COVID hit and everything, like immediately after the
Hmm.
con, it was just everyone was like, that was the
Yeah,
last thing I got to be with my community. And it was kind of surreal because I look back, I'm like, man, it feels like that was years ago, but
it
it's
wasn't. Yeah.
not.
I definitely feel the same way in terms of watching. This does link. Watching films and stuff. I'll see like scenes of people at parties, and I'm like, "What are you doing? You can't do that. We've got COVID going on." And I'm like, "Oh shit, wait, like this is like first of all pre-COVID, and also it's not real." So
Yeah, exactly. Like
it's
every
like
time I see
yeah.
TV, I'm like, where's their masks? But it's pre-COVID. It's such a strange times that we live in.
Hmm. So did you meet up with anybody that you kind of talk to online and stuff in like on your Twitter and stuff in terms of furry? Because I'm sure outside of the podcast we were talking about how you have a set goat Telegram group chat.
Yes, the goat community and like not many people in the furry fandom, especially people who don't have goat personas. Like goat personas are very uncommon,
Hmm.
so much so that literally almost every goat knows each other, and we literally have this chat like on Discord. It's called Goat Twitter, but it's Discord. And like we just all know each other. It's kind of like the thing where you see a goat furry, you follow them, they follow you back, like we all just know
Yeah,
each other, and it's
all
such an
mutuals.
interesting
Yeah.
community whereas we all know each other.
So I can't vibe with that because I'm a dog. Everybody's a dog, man. Everyone's a dog.
Dogs are
So
cute,
dogs
but
are
there's so
cute.
many of you.
I know, and it's all like golden retriever energy type shit. But I vibe with it. It's cool, I guess.
Yeah.
Trying to think of other, because I was meant to go to my first convention and I didn't get to go, and it fucking sucked because it was in May. So in COVID was like massive thing in March, and people were like, "Oh, it'll blow over by then," but no, it just got worse. It got worse
Nope,
and
it
worse.
didn't.
So, and it isn't like the US where obviously conventions are dotted around all over the place in the US and it's hard to travel, but in the UK we only really have maybe like two or three big conventions. You got like I think is it called ScotiaCon? There's one in Scotland, and then there's Confuzzle, which is one I was going to go to, which is like the bigger furry convention. That's in Birmingham, and I think there's some like camping ones as well. But Confuzzle is like the only one like big, kind of convention center one.
Hmm.
So it kind of sucked when it was cancelled, and I'm hoping that it is an in person thing in May, but I'm not hopeful. I'm not gonna be. I don't want to be a pessimist, but like I'm just trying to be real. I don't think COVID's gonna be. I think it's gonna get better from now. Mark my
But not
touch wood, but like
fixed.
not fixed and not safe enough to have that big of gatherings, if you know what I mean. But hopefully I'm proven wrong, so I can go to furry conventions. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
And I might even have
Especially
a partial by then.
since May is going to be like my 20th birthday. So I'm like,
Yay!
yeah,
That's
I'm going to
great.
be adult. I don't want to
Yeah.
pay taxes.
Well, some countries have kind of isolated it, and they're like fine to go out now. And it's so weird to think all the differences. Like, COVID isn't that big of a thing in like New Zealand and Australia anymore, but compared to like UK and US, who are like still getting lots and lots of cases every day. I don't know. I don't think our government did very well with coping with it. But at the same time, like, it is a really hard thing to deal with. So, but also, like, I also really don't like our Tory government. So I'm not going to get into that. But yeah.
Yeah. Like for us, it is just getting worse. And I especially consider it due to be like they didn't handle it the best in the very beginning. And then now that COVID's been around for a while, it's kind of the fear of it has died down. And people are like, yeah, it's fine. I'm just
Yeah,
going to
it's a
go
thing.
out.
Yeah.
No, we're still in a pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I definitely feel that since I do like my retail job as well. Some people just don't take it seriously. Like I had somebody come in a few days ago that was like, "Oh, sorry, I forgot my mask." And I'm like, "What? It's been going on since March. Like, how have you forgot your mask?" But like, we can't be like, get out of the shop. We just have to be like, "It's okay," but like, really, it's not okay.
Yeah, cheek and tongue.
Yeah.
Tongue in cheek.
Tongue in cheek. Oh well. Anyway, we're on almost 40 minutes, so I think we should move on to the album choice of this week, which we were discussing at the start of the episode, which is Ocean Eyes by Owl City. So I'm going to start this off by saying, reading the year this came out, 2009, that makes me feel old as fuck. Like, it really, really does. Like, it really does.
Like, for me, it came out when I was in elementary school. Like, I was 8 years old. And it was absolutely crazy because I'm like, literally 11 years later, it's still like my number one album and pretty much what I consider the soundtrack of my life. Because watching the music video for Owl City Fireflies, that was my very first YouTube video that I've ever seen.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so kind of, it was my introduction to the internet because growing up, my parents were a little bit of helicopter parents. I love them so much, but like, and they've definitely gotten a lot better. I was the first kid, so it was a trial and error run, but like, I couldn't really do the internet or anything. And I was like, whoa, the internet exists. So kind of Owl City was like my introduction to everything on the internet. And I just love it.
I remember listening to Fireflies on like my shitty MP3 player, and I used to like play it in the car all the time. So it just kind of takes me back to that when I used to have that in like, now that's what I call music, like 50 something. And it would just honestly... kind of going through the album, what makes you, obviously you're talking about how you've essentially grown up with this album a little bit and you've listened to it throughout your life, but why has that been the case? Why do you think you've kind of connected so strongly with this?
Well, I say it was because of a few of my life experiences, like the whole Owl City Ocean Eyes album. It's just wonderfully soft seaside vibes with the album. It's very gentle and loving, and listening to it brings me to my own happy place. And growing up with someone who has ADHD and anxiety that wasn't diagnosed until very much later, like that was always my very calming thing. And I would always relate to it because for a few years I would go to sailing school, and it always reminded me of sailing school and the peacefulness that is in the water. And it's really funny because I actually have a fear of like deep water and being in open water, but I love sailing. It's just I'm good with sailing as long as I stay on the boat.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. I think that's really, it is really lovely when you can connect like a personal thing to an album. And I think that's kind of what establishes my favorite albums as well. Like, one of my favorite records is Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys. And even though it's like a small memory, I learned about that album because like my dad used to just play it in the car all the time. And that's just something even though it's not like a sad thing or anything, like it's just like nice. I just remember him having the CD in the car and just playing it all the time. And I used to be like, yeah, it's a vibe. And I love I'm not going to get off because obviously we're not talking about pet sounds. I want to talk about pet sounds if I get to choose my own episode thingy. But just as a short thing, they're very experimental for the time it was released. Brian Wilson, the guy who, like, the main front person of the Beach Boys, like, went through a lot of shit making it. I like watched a biopic called Love and Mercy about it, and it was like incredible. But anyway, that's besides the point. Basically, I have a lot of respect for it, and similar to you with Ocean Eyes, I have personal connections to it that I kind of relate to in my real life, and I think that is something that enhances our lovability, or if that's even a word, it just enhances our love for art if we have personal connections to it that we can link. Only us can link, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I would say that it's basically how, the whole nostalgia factor, which makes everybody like these things. And especially if you look back and you don't have the nostalgia, you're like, oh, like, this show is absolute crap. Like, how do you love it? But really, it's just more of our past experiences really shape, like, our own personal connection to these songs and albums. Like, it was so funny when the whole Firefly song became a meme. Like, that was up in high school, and I was like, yes, everybody's listening to it now. And it was I remember that meme, like, so well, because I was just like, yeah, I've heard this song so many times. Like, I literally am like, oh, I forgot what it was in my Spotify rewind, but it was like, you listen to this song, like, 200 plus times, and I'm like, only 200? Because, like, I just listen to it so much, and it's wonderful. It always brings me to my happy place, and it really reminds me of how much I've grown as a person.
That's lovely. Instead of me going through my favorite going through my favorite kind of song choices, what's your favorite out of the album, would you say?
Ooh, good question. So of course, Fireflies, because of just the introduction to the internet and how much it means to me. But for me, Vanilla Twilight was the next one. And then Hello Seattle, because it's just very caring and gentle. Like, Vanilla Twilight is a very soft and gentle song. And along with Hello Seattle, like, the personifications that he gives as being like a sleeping pill or a seahorse that's just swimming through the water. It's just very gentle and loving, and you just feel a sense of love when you just listen to it.
I did really like Vanilla Twilight, and I feel that Hello Seattle was obviously nice and calming, but I think Umbrella Beach, like, just completely, like, changed the kind of the mood. Well, not the mood, but, like, it was way more upbeat, which I liked. I liked the kind of contrast of that as well.
Yeah, exactly. It makes it a good album because you have the soft and relaxing music, but you also have, like, songs like Umbrella Beach, where it's just super upbeat and fun. It's just great to listen to.
Sometimes I would say the gripe I had with it, first of all, it's not really music I would personally listen to, but that's one of the reasons of the podcast, is for me to listen to new things and talk about stuff that isn't just MF Doom, Kanye West rap that I obviously will be biased towards. But in terms of Ocean Eyes, I did think sometimes when I was going through, because I listened to it like front to back, like maybe like 2 times, it did seem a little bit samey sometimes when it came to like songs. Obviously we had the example of Hello Seattle and Umbrella Beach being very contrasting, but like throughout the middle of the album I was listening to it like a second time, and I didn't have, like, because usually when I listen to an album the first time, or like especially for the podcast, I will have all my focus towards it, and I'll make sure I can see when the next track starts and stuff. But I think when it came to second listen, I was like, oh, I'm on to the next one, because sometimes it did feel like a little bit samey, but it
repetitive.
But at the same time, sometimes that's nice, because that is the entire point of an album sometimes, is to provide a piece of work that has the same theme and the same kind of feel to it throughout. So I can't really fail it on that too much, definitely.
Yeah, and especially since this was Owl City's like first album, really. And of course, it's definitely very samey, especially during the middle. It's kind of the thing with like softer, gentler music. You can only do
so much.
I want to say you can only do so much, because you can't really do like very sudden dun dun or changing it up very much, because then it'll completely change up the vibe. But it's definitely good to like have it on a record just playing in the background as you're just doing your own work. It's very good ambience music.
I can definitely see that, like 100%. I can imagine putting this on in the background whilst I'm doing work, and it just being nice in relaxing, because it hits that point of being relaxing but also not too distracting, which is sometimes a really good kind of feel for an album as well. Trying to think of anything. I love the I don't know why this has stood out to me, but I love the names of all of the tracks. They just seem really like unique, like Meteor Shower and like the Saltwater Room. It's like it wants me to kind of I want to listen to these to find out what do these names mean and why are they so unique and different with each like record. It's not like a classic. It's hard to explain, but it's not like a classic kind of romance kind of song name like She Needs Me or some shit. It's like the tip of an iceberg, tidal wave, and it's like I want to know what this tidal wave is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And the songs kind of just relate back to the album theme, where it's like very oceany, very seaside with like Saltwater Room,
Yeah.
Tidal Wave, Tip of the Iceberg. But also like you got songs like The Bird and the Worm, and you're just like, what? That doesn't fit with the theme. Like, what's up with that?
I gotta say, I'm gonna look at the discography now, and so if you are right, and it is, apart from a few, that had like Of June and Maybe I'm Dreaming, Ocean Eyes was one of their first, and maybe it might be their first studio album or something, or studio produced album, and to have a chart topper like Fireflies on one of your like beginning albums is like, that's a really good feat for them. So that's really cool to look at as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and especially how it just kind of makes a resurgence many, many years later as just a meme.
Yeah, definitely.
Like
Kinda,
long after
yeah.
they've stopped making music.
It links to like obviously we've had like meme culture and all that stuff of like songs or whatever, or kind of people getting big because of like a kind of joke or a culture that's like spread over the internet. But you could also link this with how Fireflies got big again because of memes. It's like how TikTok songs get really big, or quote unquote TikTok songs on TikTok that suddenly get big, like Little Dark Age by MGMT was a song I listened to previously, but then TikTok started using it in like edits and stuff, or like TikTok videos, and now it's like a really, really kind of not overplayed song, because it's a really good song, but it's gained way more popularity because of this culture shift that's happened because of TikTok. So it is really interesting to see the impact on like internet culture in terms of art as well, because Fireflies was obviously a chart topper back in like 2009, but now it's having a resurgence because of people making jokes on the internet. Like, if you said that like 20 years ago when the internet was first coming around, like that just wouldn't happen. You'd be like, that's a bunch of shit. Like, what are you on about?
Yeah, exactly. It's just the great change in culture that even like from last year, like we're constantly evolving because of just the internet and meme culture, whereas it's bringing old things back, like the whole Africa from Toto meme.
Yeah.
That was like a song that was just played
Exactly,
all
yeah.
the time by our marching band. And it's just the memes that shape and change like internet trends and musical trends. It's absolutely crazy.
To close off, like talking about the album, because we're a little bit pushed for time. Would you say, do you sometimes get a bit agitated that Fireflies was the only track to kind of get big on the album, and do you sometimes feel like people don't appreciate the album as a whole enough, or don't give it like a chance? Or do you see it as a way of, since Fireflies got big, that introduced me to the album, and that's the only reason I listen to Owl City today?
Yeah, so with the whole song, like I would always tell people like, oh yeah, my favorite song is Fireflies from Owl City, and everyone's like, oh, you like it because of that meme? And I'm like, not to be one of those people who are like, oh, I liked it before it was cool.
It's big, but
Yeah.
you
I'm
did
like,
though.
no,
Own
it's
that
important.
shit. Own that
I
shit.
did, but and also it was always funny because like in certain classes, like when I did yearbook in high school, we would always make these like monthly playlists, and I would always add it to the playlist, and everyone's like, oh, Fireflies again, and I'm like, it's important to me. Just let me have this.
It's not because of the joke, guys. It's because like it does. I have a personal connection with this song.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But yeah, I wish that like, especially songs like Hello Seattle, Saltwater Room, and definitely Umbrella Beach, like people are just looking at it like, oh yeah, it's the guy who made Fireflies. But no, like Owl City has a ton of really amazing songs, and even songs that you like wouldn't think of, like from Wreck-It Ralph, When Can I
Yeah,
See You
I was
Again?
literally going to say that as well. I was literally going to say that. That's such a good song. That's
It
that's not
is.
on
Oh, it's
that's not
such a
on
bop.
Oceanizer. That's on his is that not on his like 2012 album
Yeah, exactly.
and
It's just
2011 album?
how crazy how this band, like this one guy, just makes
Mm.
these songs. Like he even did a cover from Waving Through a Window from Dear Evan Hansen, which is
Mm.
like a current day Broadway musical. And it's just so interesting how varied the songs are from album to album.
But yeah, definitely if you like Fireflies or you've even just heard of Owl City, give this album a listen if you haven't already for the podcast. It's definitely something that I was surprised that I enjoyed more than I thought I would. So, and on
Oh,
that note,
wonderful.
yeah, and on that note, we will move on to the film choice of this week, which was Ferris Bueller's Day Off, directed by John Hughes. Now, I had already seen this film before, and I am going to start off by saying, I don't know about you, but I am a sucker for coming of age films and like teenage drama films. Like, that is my fucking thing. I don't know if you feel the same, or if you just generally just like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I'll let you,
Oh,
take the
yeah.
stage about it.
Yeah, coming of age movies, absolutely wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Like talking about the classics like Breakfast
Breakfast
Club
Club. Mm-hmm.
and even newer ones. Like I grew up on High School Musical. Like I was in elementary school when that was a huge trend. Like yeah, coming of age things, and especially listening and watching them when you're younger
Mm-hmm.
and coming of age, you kind of base your experiences off of that.
Yeah.
Like I don't remember how, I think around 6th grade is when I first saw Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And let me say, it's a great movie and I absolutely loved it. But that is not, Ferris Bueller is not a good example for a little 6th grader like me because
Yeah,
I watched it with
definitely.
my best friend and she was like, I want to be cool like that. I want to skip school like him. And I'm like, Nikki, no, we're in middle school. What can we do if we skip school? We can't drive. We can't go anywhere. We're just
Yeah.
little babies.
He's a bit of a little shithead as well sometimes. But I think
Oh, yeah.
he's a lovable shithead though. That's the thing, that's what the movie wants to kind of encapsulate with its character. And going back to mentioning The Breakfast Club, obviously John Hughes also directed The Breakfast Club. So people kind of say John Hughes is one of the staples of coming of age films. And I know I've seen Breakfast Club as well, and it is a fantastic film. And definitely gives off like same kind of feel, same kind of vibe to like the dialogue and how the characters interact with each other. Similar things between Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Breakfast Club, definitely.
Yeah. And it's so wonderful because, like, it's kind of the same trends, but like different spins.
Yeah.
Like, with The Breakfast Club being a classic, it's about all these people in detention. And you can kind of see it with like newer ones, like from Disney. Like, have you seen the movie Lemonade Mouth?
I haven't, no.
Oh yeah, it's a good, and it's also got fantastic songs, but it's kind of just like The Breakfast Club, where it's like these kids get into detention, but instead of like, I mean, yes, they do bonding, but they form like a band, and it's kind of
Oh, I
like a Disney
see. Oh, it's
classic,
a
and
Disney film, isn't it? I've just looked it up. It's on
yes.
Disney Plus. I'm gonna watch it as soon as I finish the podcast episode.
Oh, the
Trust.
music is so good. Like, I remember during college, like, it was around like 2 a.m. and I went to like the common room of my building. It's just a bunch of people, like, bunch of people that came from like a frat party, like drunk, high, or whatever. And they're just watching Lemonade Mouth at 2 a.m. in the lobby. And I
Nice.
just sat and joined them. We all just sang along to it. It was great. But Ferris Bueller, especially like with the music of Ferris Bueller is absolutely
Oh, I love it.
amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I mean, you've got like classic songs from it as well, but you've also got kind
Hmm.
of compositions as well. Like obviously you've got that like that oh yeah, like the oh yeah, like that's a classic
Oh, yeah.
Ferris. Yeah, that's a classic Ferris
Yeah.
Bueller song. And I was talking to you about the theme that's used at the end, like the when he's trying to get
I
home.
believe it's
I don't know what it's called,
it's
but
called Race, I
race,
think.
yeah, it's really really good, and I love it. It goes back to me definitely thinking that good music makes a film. I think a good soundtrack really really
Absolutely.
makes a film, and Ferris Bueller does it really well as well. I don't know if you knew this, but there was I only found out about it on like the internet, but it was an actual advertisement in America. like the Joe Keery, the guy who plays Steve Harrington in Stranger Things, did like a Domino's advert or like a commercial where he recreated, or Domino's recreated, the Ferris Bueller scene with Domino's. It was a
Yeah, I remember that. He was
yeah,
like running through all the yards and stuff.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that ad.
That's like a perfect example of kind of like a cultural impact that
Exactly.
somebody's made. I mean, Ferris Bueller came out in what 90, no, not 90, 86, 86. And I mean, here we are making a advert referencing it like 26 years later, and I think that's really, really cool
Yeah,
to me.
exactly.
Like, it's not even that, it's like 80, 90, 36, no, 30,
Yeah, it
no,
was
34,
1986.
34 years later. I'm really bad with
Right.
fucking years. Oh my god.
Oh
So
yeah.
in the first episode, oh my god, I said that I cut it out, but I'm gonna, a little secret, for the listeners. I said that
Mm.
Back to the Future was made like 10, 15 years ago when it came out in like fucking 84 or something. So I'm so bad with the years. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Going through more of the kind of storyline, I think it's really well paced. I think that a lot of the characters are like lovable. Obviously, we're going back to Ferris Bueller. You think he's an asshole because he is an asshole, but you want him to succeed because, especially as like a teenager, if you're watching this as like a teenager, you don't want to see like the students win. You don't want to see him fail, despite him being a bit of a dick to his mates sometimes. Like his mate Cameron, who's like legitimately sick, and he's like, "Yeah, stop being a pussy. Like fucking come out and drive a car, drive your dad's car." So
Yeah. Like he was a terrible friend.
but at the
Oh my
same, yeah,
God, the poor
at the
kid.
same time, though, you can see it as a way of Ferris, like in his own little like dickish way, trying to kind of try and like suggest to Cameron that he needs to take control of his own life rather than his parents, you know, controlling and being like overbearing towards him.
Yeah.
Obviously, like disregarding the sickness thing, because that's a whole different story. But obviously, you've got that kind of overarching like theme of the car and how Cameron at the start of the film is worried about his dad, like dad find out that that they drove the car and shit, and then by the end of the film, Cameron's like fuck that, and he just starts like trashing the car, and obviously it like drives off the cliff, and I think that
Yep,
is
out the
yeah,
window.
and I love that because I think that isn't because of Ferris, and that isn't Ferris's fault. That is Cameron, and it's a good thing for Cameron because he's coming to terms with taking a grasp of his own life and standing up for himself when he feels like he's being neglected by his family over a fucking car. Like, do you know what I mean? It's very
Like
yeah,
his dad loves the car more than
yeah,
him.
exactly, and that's a thing that's said throughout, which is interesting. I do think the villains as well, the villain characters were also very likable too, even though we're not supposed to like them. Like it's obviously the comedic relief is the principal or whatever, and I think that's done
Yes.
fantastically as well. And yeah, I'm trying to think of any other characters. I mean, I love the contraptions as well that Ferris had in order to kind of try and hide that he's actually like out. It's like a classic
That
mindset
was
like Home Alone
actual
stuff.
genius.
Yeah, I
And it
love
kind
it.
of reminds me of like Home
Home Alone,
Alone
yes, yeah, as I was
traps.
saying, yeah. I still need to watch Home Alone. It's like I haven't been watching any Christmas movies. I've just been watching movies for the podcast.
It's a great Christmas movie, and
It's one of the best,
I
yeah.
highly recommend the second one. I watched it the other day, and it's so weird because it's got like Donald Trump in it, and we're
Yeah,
like,
it does.
oh,
Holy shit! And he's like down,
yeah,
the hall and to the left, and it's like what the fuck? It's so weird to me. Like I don't want to. Obviously, I don't want to shit on like Americans and stuff because I love you guys so much, and I know my guest is currently American, so I'm not going to do that. But it does really scare me when your president or your ex-president now, woohoo, was
woohoo,
we used to be an actor and then he went into presidency in politics and law. Like if that happened to us in the UK, it probably has to be found. I'm probably just not aware of it. Um, that would just be so. I don't know. I just find it so weird. And it's like the same thing about Kanye West, like running for presidency, even though like it was not taken seriously at all. I'm a massive Kanye fan. Obviously, he's like one of my favorite artists ever, but it's just fucking stupid on his half. And we'll not get into that. But basically, yeah, it's so weird to see somebody who had such power in your country be in a fucking Christmas movie. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just so weird.
yeah, it's so odd, and I guess it. I mean, hey, it's fine. Nobody really hates Americans more than Americans do, but literally, it's odd because America, we kind of have like a trend of just big not political like actors and stuff
Yeah.
with like, please don't roast me. I think it's like John F. Kennedy used to be an actor, and we had like Arnold Schwarzenegger, which everyone knows, and he became like, oh my gosh, I need to catch up on the rankings, but I think he was like the senator or something for
Oh,
California.
wow, really?
Yeah.
That's so. I mean, linking back to Home Alone though, John Hughes like produced Home Alone, and you can definitely see that kind of link. Definitely, with Home Alone and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I mean, John Hughes did a lot of like coming of age or kind of films circulating around like a child's experience of growing up or fending for themselves, which is like the entire thing of Home Alone. I think he did a really good job of kind of representing that in film as well. And I mean, people get inspired to make coming of age films because of those 80s classics. Because they're not only coming of
Yeah.
age classics, they are 80s classic films. Like when I think of a classic 80s film, I think of Breakfast Club, I think of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So I think that is something that can be taken away as well.
Yeah, exactly. And they're just amazing movies that like our parents grew up on.
Yeah,
Like my
exactly.
parents are always like, "Oh, you want to watch The Breakfast Club? You want to watch The Breakfast Club?" And I'm like, "Please, not again." And like Dead Poet Society, that's also an
Yes,
awesome
yes.
movie. Like kind of coming of age, but like more of like private
hmm
school, and it's got Robin Williams, and oh,
hmm
it's a great movie. And also to correct myself from earlier, Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor of
Governor. Oh, I
California. And
see.
it's so odd that like the guy who was in the Terminator is the governor of California.
Oh,
Like it's
yeah.
such an
hmm
odd country we are.
We're on like an hour and three, so I'm gonna go quickly through some stuff I liked about the film more because I'm just gonna gush about it because I did really enjoy watching this. Um,
Oh yeah.
so the shots in the shot composition, the framing, lovely, especially during the scene where they're in the museum. Like on my phone right now, I have that shot of, you know, that like classic shot of like them mimicking the art and they're like doing all like the crossing of the arms and stuff, and that's just lovely framed and like really nicely blocked. Like you got Ferris and you got the girl and then you got Cameron. I forgot the girl's name. I'm really sorry. And then it's all really well blocked, and I just love that so much. And I think it was fantastically shot. So congrats on that as well.
Yeah, and with the movie, like it is the cinematography is simply amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember like when I went to the art museum with a few of people from my art classes in high school, like we tried to recreate that.
Mhm.
And the movie itself, like it's so interesting because like you have Ferris like directly talking to the audience,
Yeah.
breaking the fourth wall, and kind of that movie was like what
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
kickstart
Kickstarted
the
that. Yeah.
trend
Yeah.
of breaking the fourth wall,
hmm
and it handled it so wonderfully.
Yeah. Definitely. And it's like live commentary to what's going on, and
Yeah.
it's such a big integral part of the film. I gotta say at the end of the film as well, fantastic. There's the entire scene of it being so calculated and like loads of tracking shots and loads of moving shots, like one shot of like continuity of him running and trying to get back home before his parents do. It's just it keeps the tension going, it keeps the kind of pacing going because we want to see if he makes it or not. And I love that, and it's really well done.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's
Mhm.
like that, and along with the music and just the amazing quotes, like that's what
Yeah.
makes it such a
Yeah.
wonderful and classic movie.
I mean, the only gripes I would probably have with it is that it's slightly cheesy, but at the same time, it's an '80s coming of age John Hughes film, so
Yeah.
that is to be expected. And sometimes the dialogue was a little bit stale. I found the scene in the police station with his sister and that guy a little bit like, I don't know, just a little bit boring. But I mean, even so,
Yeah.
like that is such a little part of the film compared to the entire journey that we witness of Ferris, going on an adventure. And again, linking back to what you were saying about your friends saying, "Oh, we should skip school." It is every kid's dream just to like be able to do that, and I do think a sense of relatability and imaginary stuff or like imagination in coming of age films is like integral to making a successful like adolescent film as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of just showing like what every kid wants to do. Like they're like want to skip school
Yeah,
and go on their own adventure. And it kind of gives the kids
yeah,
like that imaginary thing come true without them having to go through the fear of actually
mhm,
doing it.
yeah, exactly. So definitely check out Ferris Bueller's Day Off if you haven't for the podcast already. I already seen it, now watched it a second time and thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you for picking this film. It is a fantastic film, and it's got that the last thing to finish it off was it's got that classic line of like, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around for a while, it'll, I don't know what the end of it is, like it'll go or something like that. What is it? We got to get this right. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great quote. It's a great one to live by.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I mean, we're basically finished now. I mean, we're on like an hour and 7. I keep saying that I'm like wanting to keep these episodes short, but I just love discussing everything so much.
Yeah.
So it's so hard to keep them short. And I mean, just prefer it just to keep on like ranting about films and music and furry stuff. So yeah. Just to kind of finish off, in terms of the film, I have been rating all the films on Letterboxd every week, and I have a list of the ranking of the films that I've watched, and you can check that out in the description below on YouTube, or if you check out my Twitter, you'll probably find a link to my Letterboxd there, but if not, it's Matthew_Batey, Matthew with 2 T's, _BAYTEE. You can have a look at my other Letterboxd reviews and like rip on me for like giving every A24 film 5 stars. So apart from that, definitely check out KiddTheGoat's Twitter, where she posts art, and she has obviously a suit. Go and show her suit some love. Did a lot of work on it, you know, and all that.
Thank you.
Check out her stuff. Is there anything else you want to plug? You know, anything specifically?
Yeah, my Twitter's basically it. It's in the link in the bio. I've got my website, which has all my social medias linked to it. And I just want to say thank you for having me. It's been a great time.
It's been a lovely, lovely podcast episode. And if you want to have an experience like this, guys, you know, potentially coming on the podcast, fill out the form below and I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. I'm quite backlogged with people, but I'll at least give you a kind of message on, you know, whether you can come on or not, or like a time frame if I'm like interested in having a conversation with you, etc. So that's in the link below as well. But yeah, thank you very much, guys, for listening, and I'll see you guys next week.